Hello everyone, BadMouse here, and a specific hello to Scotty M, because this video is primarily based towards him. Now, I, as you am aware, was a staunch right-wing libertarian.
Yeah, so immediately you have already made a mistake and you're barely even into your first sentence. A right-wing libertarian. First and foremost, when we talk about a libertarian, we're talking about dead on centre. That's political ideology. Libertarianism is centre.
Now, there are some accusations that Scotty has made about me that, before I get into the crux of my discussion, I'd just like to talk about briefly. Well, not briefly, it's going to go on for quite a while. And I do mean this seriously, because I find when I watch your content, there's a lot in there that I find I can relate to, that I used to believe in.
I'm afraid there's nothing there that you can relate to, and the simple reason being is because the reason why you moved from supporting capitalism to socialism is simply because you don't understand economics to begin with. We will address several of these issues as we go further into the video.
So the first point I'd just like to quickly clear up is my stance on UKIP. Now, I actually voted for UKIP in the EU elections in 2014. And this was when I still thought voting could make an effective change.
If voting never made a change, why is the Conservative Party now talking about an in-out referendum on the European Union? Guess who pressured the Conservative Party into that? That was the United Kingdom Independence Party.
The reason I eventually began a resentment of them was because, despite not agreeing with social justice at the time, I found them flooded with statist neocons.
Neocons. Neoconservatives. Who are basically like Trotskyites. They're basically socialists. I don't even need to comment more on that one.
I didn't just never like them because I was a closeted lefty or whatever. We all come into our views in different ways. I did come into libertarianism from the left.
So you basically came into libertarianism from an oxymoron. That's more or less what you came into it from. How can you seek to control the economy and then claim you're for liberty at the same time? How can you seek to put the collective over the individual and then call that liberty? That's not liberty of the individual. And at the end of this video, you more or less contradict yourself. You really do. You contradict yourself by the meaning of liberty. You obviously clearly don't understand the meaning of the word. That's not a word in the dictionary you can just try and manipulate to change for yourself. How can you seek to infringe upon an individual's rights, an individual's liberty, and then sit there and say that you stand for liberty? It makes no logical sense. But we'll get around to that very soon.
This brings me on to my next point, which is just what I mentioned a second ago. The idea that I was somehow a fake libertarian. I mean, it's just bollocks.
I'm afraid not. You are a fake libertarian. Of course you're a fake libertarian. I mean, how can you sit there and call yourself a libertarian, but you want to prevent me from owning my own personal, private business? Please explain to me, please elaborate for me how you can call this libertarian where you want to infringe upon my right to own my own private business. You want to prevent me as an individual from owning my own private business. You can't use any excuses, by the way, because at the end of this video you do touch upon that issue and you say something about subjugation, which is a load of rubbish. Honestly is. Subjugation. Subjugation, that's a laugh. Despite the fact that individuals are free to go and, start up their own private business. Nobody's stopping them. They don't just go and work for a company and work for someone else because they're forced to. They aren't forced to. They go and work for another company because it's their own free choice. What's stopping them going and starting up their own business in a free market? You don't know, do you? You haven't got a clue. You see, that's why you went from capitalism to socialism, because you never had a clue to start with. You just went with the trend. You didn't understand capitalism to start with. But you see, that's the thing. That's what makes me laugh. How can you call yourself a libertarian, but you want to prevent me from owning my own private business? Do you actually understand? Do you understand what the definition of the word prevent means? This is the point where you go on about how the dictionary doesn't hold that much importance. I'm sorry, but when it comes to the word prevent in the dictionary, it is very important. Because the word prevent means to hinder, and to prevent means to stop something from happening. Now you're stopping me as an individual from freely owning my own business. How can you call that libertarian? You're destroying and you're infringing upon my individual liberty. Therefore, it's against the meaning of liberty. And in order to prevent me from owning my own private business, you need an element there to keep me from doing as I please. In other words, you need an element there to control me. You need an element there to stop me. And that element, I'm afraid to say, is the government. Now this is what makes me laugh about you. You think you can have your socialism without government. If you've got no government, who then is going to stop me freely owning my own private business? Who's going to stop me? Who's going to stop me? Who's going to stop me owning my own private business in your little utopia? Who's going to stop me? You see, your whole goal of this oxymoron is that you basically want this collective utopia, which your collective utopia, by the way, infringes upon individuals' rights and liberty.